Eleanor never believed in luck. She believed in logistics, global supply chains, and the fact that sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her world wasn't built on faith. It was built on calculation. Not on hope, but on control. And control was the one thing she was about to lose. At 42, she was the CEO and owner of Vanguard Logistics, an empire that moved goods around the world faster than a thought could cross the mind. Her day began at 5:15 a.m. The panoramic view of Greenwich, Connecticut, from her bedroom window was worth $3 million, but Eleanor rarely looked at the landscape. She looked at her spreadsheets. Numbers didn't lie. People did. Beside her, sprawled on silk sheets, lay Mark, her creative genius. Mark was a landscape photographer. In reality, his full-time job for the last decade had been being husband to Eleanor Vance. Once, she had loved how that sounded. Now it echoed like a verdict issued long ago. Eleanor chose her armor for the day, a structured, charcoal black sheath dress with sharp, architectural shoulder lines. The silhouette gave her the look of a warrior. She fastened a heavy gold watch to her wrist, a bold, masculine piece that served as a constant symbol of her power and control over time. She didn't decorate herself. She armed herself. Every morning was a return to the battlefield. Looking at her sleeping husband, she felt a sharp pang of nostalgia. Her mind drifted back 15 years, to a time when they had nothing but each other. That was the moment everything began, and the moment that would later destroy it all. A tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn. Cold floors. The smell of cheap pizza. Eleanor's hands trembled as she opened the registration papers for her first firm. "Mark, I'm scared," she whispered. "I've put everything into this. If it fails, we're on the street." Mark took her hands. His palms were callous then, not smooth like they were now. "Elle, you are a force of nature. I will stand behind you even if the world collapses. I don't need money. I need you." Those words became the foundation of her entire empire, and the most valuable asset she owned, one that would later prove to be counterfeit. The sharp ding of a notification on her phone snapped her back to reality. That Brooklyn boy had dissolved into the luxury she had built for him. She realized he hadn't grown alongside her. He had simply drowned in her success. She went downstairs to the kitchen where her teenage daughter, Sophia, was waiting. "Mom, why was Aunt Jules here yesterday while you were on your business trip?" the girl asked without looking up. "Dad closed the door to your office, but I heard her laughing, very loudly." Eleanor froze for a second, then quickly regained her composure. "She was here for foundation business, sweetie. Don't worry about it." The lie came easily, too easily, but a seed of doubt had already been planted, and once planted, it began to grow on its own. A deal with Singaporean investors ran late, and Eleanor decided to do something she hadn't done in years: return home early to surprise her husband. Sometimes fate doesn't scream. Sometimes it simply rearranges the schedule. As she pulled into the driveway, she saw her best friend Jules's car. Strange. Jules had said she was busy in the city. Entering the house, Eleanor heard laughter coming from the master bedroom. It wasn't polite. It wasn't distant. It was intimate, mocking. In that second, Eleanor understood something far worse than infidelity. She didn't even notice I moved 50,000 from the account, Mark's voice said, dripping with contempt. Poor Iron Lady. Soon we'll finish setting up the trust, and then we're free from this cash cow. Something inside Eleanor didn't break. It calcified. She leaned against the wall, perfectly still. That voice dragged her back to another memory, when sincerity had felt like an unshakable rock. A maternity ward, 10 years earlier. Eleanor was exhausted after a difficult birth with her son, Leo. Jules walked into the room with an armful of peonies. You're a hero, Elle, Jules said, gently stroking her hair. Don't think about the business. I'll look after Mark and the house. We're sisters, remember? One soul in two bodies. Betrayal always speaks the language of love. Now, in the present, the scent of those same peonies, sitting in a vase in the hallway, smelled like rot. Eleanor quietly exited the house. She knew that a breakdown meant losing, and Eleanor Vance did not lose. She didn't choose emotion. She chose strategy. 2 days later, Eleanor sat in the office of Private Investigator Mr. Kane. He laid 3 black folders on the desk before her. You asked for facts, Eleanor. Exhibit A. The financial leak. Your husband opened an offshore account in Jules's name. Over the last 6 months, more than $1 million has been transferred there under the guise of consulting fees. Kane pressed a key on his laptop. Exhibit B. The digital trail. Listen to this audio recording. Jules's voice filled the room, sickly sweet. Mark, honey, are you giving her those drops I brought? She needs to look confused and forgetful in front of the doctor, so we can file for conservatorship over her assets. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine. They weren't just cheating. They were dismantling her mind slowly, methodically, so she could be legally erased. Exhibit C. The penthouse. Photos slid across the desk. Mark and Jules exiting a luxury building on 5th Avenue. They leased this apartment 6 months ago, Kane said. They're listed as a married couple on the lease. Now Eleanor understood why that charity gala had haunted her for years. 3 years earlier, she had stood on stage, accepting an award. She searched the crowd for Mark, only to find him in the shadows of the bar, standing too close to Jules. Jules's hand lingered on his shoulder a second too long. Later that night, Mark hugged her tenderly. Darling, your paranoia will be your undoing. We were just discussing your gift. Paranoia, huh? Eleanor whispered. Now she saw everything. She called her lawyer. It was time to set the trap. The annual logistics gala. Eleanor wore a deep wine-colored gown made of heavy velvet. The fabric shimmered with every movement, and a long train followed her like a royal mantle. Around her neck rested a necklace of black pearls, a symbol of mourning for her former self. Mark stood beside her, glowing with self-importance. He had just signed the foundation papers, never noticing the fine print regarding total forfeiture of assets in the event of proven infidelity. Ladies and gentlemen, Eleanor's voice rang clear through the microphone. Tonight we celebrate success. But success is impossible without honesty. I want to show you the foundation of my trust in those closest to me. The lights dimmed. A screen lit up behind her. Hidden camera footage from the secret 5th Avenue apartment filled the room. How do you stand her? Jules laughed. She's unbearable, Mark replied. Always controlling. She thinks I'm an accomplice. but soon that accomplice will get a share. Silence crashed down over the ballroom. Eleanor turned toward her husband. His hands shook, at first subtly, then violently, until the champagne flute rattled against the glass. His face drained of color. "Mark," Eleanor said calmly, "you've spilled something. Your Porsche, your accounts, even that tuxedo, as of this second, they no longer belong to you." An hour later, the house was quiet. Mark was gone, taking only one battered suitcase filled with the clothes he'd worn back in Brooklyn. Eleanor sat in the living room. Sophia joined her, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "Did you know?" Eleanor asked. "I saw them at the studio a month ago, Mom," Sophia said softly. "I was just waiting for you to be ready. You're strong." Eleanor hugged her daughter and met her gaze. "Listen to me carefully, Sophia. Never let anyone build their castle on your foundation and then try to push you out of it. Never give them the keys unless you're sure they won't change the locks while you're sleeping." Sophia nodded, a steel glint appearing in her eyes. "I understand, Mom. If someone decides I'm just a bridge to their success, I'll burn that bridge while they're still standing on it." They stood together on the balcony, watching the sun rise over Greenwich. Eleanor had lost the illusion of love, but she had saved her family and her future. The empire was safe. But what about you? If you were in Eleanor's shoes, would you have the cold-blooded patience to play the long game like she did? Or would you have confronted them the second you saw them through that bedroom door? Maybe you think her revenge was too harsh, or perhaps you believe people like Mark and Jules deserved exactly what they got. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I read every single one of them, and I'm curious to see who among you has that CEO energy. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows us to bring you more intense stories like this one.